It is possible to become free from debt, financial worry, your boss, and your zip code. You can start living a life you love, but first, you need to find your freedom. Using financial independence and lifestyle design principles, you can create the life of your dreams now. There are many paths to freedom, and that is what this podcast is all about. My name is Becky from 20free.co, and I am the host of the Find Your Freedom podcast. Angela and I recorded this interview on March 31st, 2020, during the COVID-19 global pandemic. At the time, she was about 5 weeks into self-isolation with her family, and I was about 3 weeks of self-isolation at home with my partner. Being isolated at home changes a lot about our lives. For Angela, it meant that she hadn't been able to send her son to preschool for 5 weeks, and her husband had both been working from home full-time. Therefore, please forgive any background noise in this recording. This interview is really more of a chat that Angela and I had about how life has changed in the past few weeks. I'm sure you can relate to some of the ways that life during the COVID-19 crisis looks different for us. We talk about physical and financial emergency preparedness, self-sufficiency, ways we can help others in both non-monetary and monetary ways, and how we are restoring a sense of normalcy to our lives. Be sure to listen to the power moves at the end of this episode, where I'll be providing actions you can take to overcome feelings of powerlessness and helplessness that I think many of us have experienced at one time or another during this crisis. Now, let's get to the interview with Angela. So, welcome to Find Your Freedom, Angela.
Thanks for having me.
You live in Kirkland in Washington State, which is essentially the epicenter of the coronavirus outbreak in the United States. It's where the first deaths were seen. So, can you just tell me what was it like living in the epicenter when things were ramping up in your area and everyone else in the United States wasn't aware yet of this danger?
So I think that was the strangest part, was talking to friends that live in other areas and realizing that their lives really hadn't changed at all. And we had gone to Costco the last Saturday of February. And I've never seen Costco that busy, even the week of Christmas or something, Thanksgiving. This was wildly more intense than that. We were able to get toilet paper, but we had to get the name brand because the Costco toilet paper was sold out. And it was at that point that we realized things were bigger than we even realized. And the Life Care Center, where, everybody has heard of now, is near us and near my son's daycare. And so it really hit home. We'd been to the Walgreens the week before the outbreak and realizing that's where their staff would go to fill prescriptions, really hit it close to home. And then our city Facebook groups, almost immediately you heard stories of loved ones passing. So it definitely hit home. Even when the number of deaths in the country were 10, I was 2 people away from knowing people that had passed. So that's where I started writing more on my blog about our experience, because I realized that a lot of parts of this country, people were not taking it seriously. And since then, I've had quite a few friends be like, thank you for writing so much about it, because I took things more seriously because you were talking about it early on, which I think is good. But it's also weird to realize that the epicenter started here, but now we've dropped to number 3 for deaths in the country and number 6 or 7 for positive cases. So I think that our state did a lot of things right early on, that I'm cautiously hopeful that maybe things won't be quite as bad here, but it's still kind of early to tell.
I'm very grateful to you for the information that you shared in the beginning of when you were experiencing this. I'm on the East Coast. I didn't have much contact with other people who were from Washington State, but the information that you shared made me very concerned, and I started doing more research. I shared that information with my family. I asked everyone to go out and stock up. We were able to go to the store about a week before there was really any activity in my area. I would say on the East Coast, and I live near New York, which is at this point the largest center of cases in the United States. we are lagging about 2 weeks behind in terms of seeing the number of cases go up and the number of deaths go up. So it was very helpful to me to see that. And you also shared some great resources on preparedness and how to make sure that you are prepared for something like this. What are some ways that you were financially prepared for something like this to happen? And also in maybe non-monetary ways, were you prepared for something like this?
So I think that's where general emergency preparedness is something that I'm hoping that we all take away from this situation once the crisis is over and things go back to normal, that we don't go back to normal as far as preparedness is concerned. We talk about the big one as far as the earthquake, the big magnitude earthquake that's going to hit our region at some point, whether it's our lifetimes or not. And right now, I feel the most confident ever that our region would actually be a lot more okay as far as individual families, because people have taken things more seriously as far as preparedness. And then as far as non-monetary, I guess it is monetary, but it's more that we have kept our fixed expenses really, really low. So we bought an older, smaller home, and we've never upsized it. We've done a few upgrades, but they've either been cash flowed or 0% financed in the past. So our fixed costs as far as our mortgage are very low. Our cars are paid off. We have a roommate, and we just don't have a lot of recurring expenses that have to happen. We spend a lot on travel. We've spent a lot on our pets in previous years, but things seem to be stable there. And so we have more flexibility to ramp down our spending in situations where we might want to. And since right now, both our jobs are currently still employing us and our roommate still has his job, we've been able to shift some of that discretionary spending to focus more on more takeout and bigger tips so that we can try and help support our local businesses. Because one of my biggest fears is that once this is all over, all that's going to be left are the big mega corporations, because the small businesses won't have survived. And I don't like the look of that world so much.
And I agree with that. I hope that we don't see that happen. And what you've done is create a Facebook group in your area, right, to get people together to support these businesses. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I live on the east side of Seattle, so Kirkland is one of the cities, but we've got a number of other cities that are on the other side of the lake from Seattle. And Seattle had a big restaurant Facebook group to support the businesses there, but there was nothing on the east side. And so I created a Facebook group that's now about 3,500 members and super active. And people are talking about which restaurants are open, which have delivery, just really a place for the community to come together and figure out ways to support our local restaurants, which for me and for the people in the group, I can tell it feels very hopeless a lot of the time, especially if you don't work in healthcare, you don't work in a business that's actively doing something. You know, I spent the first couple of weeks feeling super, super helpless and realizing there wasn't really anything I could do until starting the Facebook group and realizing there was something I could do. Maybe not to control the spread of the virus, but in a way to help support our local businesses and employees be able to get through this. So it's been a good place to pour some extra hours into. And I'm hopeful that because of that group and groups like it, that maybe more businesses will survive this than otherwise would. So I also helped a friend start one in California that's got thousands of members too. And so if anybody after this needs help setting one up in their area, I am willing to, for free, help you set up and get the Facebook group going, because it feels really good to be able to do something, even if it's not directly related.
Yeah, that's a really great thing for you to do. And I've seen you share some other ways that while we can't really control anything on a large scale, we can help within our communities on a smaller scale. What are some other things that you've been doing to be able to help and have some control in this kind of situation?
Well, I think part of it too was actually pulling our son out of preschool at the end of February, which seemed really, really early at the time. He actually hasn't been a single day in March, but I could have him home with me and I could work from home. And so while it's been a struggle sometimes, I realized that, we have the ability and the privilege to stay home. And so we should be, because not everyone can. But if everyone who can stay home did, we would be in a much better place.
Absolutely. And other things that people can do is offer to help people. If you know someone who's immunocompromised or disabled and unable to get medications or groceries, to either assist them to get those things, to offer to provide some if you have a significant, stock. Check in on people who might be living alone and just not having the amount of social contact that they're used to. That's something that you can do that's completely free, whether it's people that your grandparents, elderly neighbors, or people that you might not know as well. This is a good opportunity to really create a community in your neighborhood. And I've seen you participate in the community that's in your neighborhood. Will you talk a little bit about that and what you guys are doing together?
I didn't create the community in my neighborhood. It's been there for decades, and we just really lucked out to be in a space that is so small town neighborhood, even though we're not in quite a small town. And I have actually picked up some medications for some older neighbors. They were resistant at first, but I kind of badgered them into I have to go pick up my stuff anyway, so why don't I pick some up for you? And we were out for a walk 2 days ago, and another neighbor drove by and was like, we're doing our grocery run. Is there anything you need? Just talking between neighbors and trying to minimize the number of contacts and the number of times we go into stores. And then we've done a few social distancing happy hours and that sort of thing, where we all get our separate wine glasses and our separate wine. And then we hang out in the cul-de-sac in the sun and just be 10 feet apart and kind of just talk loudly at each other. I really loved our neighborhood for a long time. We have a really special place that we live, but I have appreciated it 10 times more now because we know each other better than just the passing acquaintance on the street. I picked up takeout last week and I was able to no touch drop off some of the meal to one of our neighbors who does live alone and is immunocompromised. And so she hadn't been going anywhere, but I was able to get her some more interesting food. And other neighbors have been checking in on her. And I guess between all of us, she gets texts from somebody at least once a day to check in and make sure she's doing okay. And so even our neighbors that live alone, they're not really alone in the same way because we do know each other and we'll say hello and be out in our street and our yards. And so it really helps us feel not so cut off from the world. We might be cut off from general society, but at least in our neighborhood, things are kind of sort of normal. We're just spread out a little bit more.
And how has your lifestyle as a whole changed due to COVID?
Well, I haven't left the city of Kirkland since February 27th. So that's a pretty significant change. We go out for weekend adventures probably once a month or so. And it's really weird to realize that we're not going anywhere right now. We did one night out to one of the local islands in mid-early February. And, we had a conversation at dinner that night about COVID and China and how things were looking. And then 2 weeks later, our world was completely upside down. So that's definitely different. And we've been doing a lot of Zoom chats, everybody else. But one of our neighbors that moved last year, we've been doing Zoom chats with them and another neighbor who's still here. And last Saturday, we did a pizza party with them. We had lunch and they had dinner because of the time change. And so we were still able to eat together and hang out together. It just happens to have to be virtually now, which is not as good as getting to hug people, but it's a heck of a lot better than just a text message.
That's true. And like me, I know that you are very extroverted and I wanted to see how you're dealing with that. It sounds like the Zoom calls are, helpful for that social connection. I'm finding the same. My podcast interviews are like a lifeline right now. I'm getting to really reach out and connect with people when I feel otherwise that I'm very socially isolated.
Yeah. Lots of Zoom calls, lots of text messages, lots of group chats. It's not the same. And then having face-to-face time with our neighbors has been a really big deal. I'm not getting face-to-face time with anybody else, but at least for the people that live close to me, I can at least see them. And so that's been a big deal. And, now that it's been more than a month, I feel like things are kind of settling into reality. The first few weeks, for sure, maybe the first 3 weeks, 4 weeks, things had a very like suspended reality, unreality feeling to it. And I don't know, in the last week or so, things have started to settle and realizing, okay, this is real life for now. We just need to get in a routine. I've been getting out and going for long walks every day, either listening to an audiobook or talking to a friend, but just trying to recenter myself as much as I can to this isn't going to be over next week. And so trying to figure out how we settle into this new weird normal for however long it lasts.
Yeah, I've felt the same, being a little bit behind. You guys were kind of getting to a stasis, a new normal where I am. And so it's been interesting to see. It kind of gives me hope that I think just as humans, we feel really emotionally affected by this stuff at first, but we're actually super adaptable. And I think a lot of people are seeing that with their kids having to be at home all the time and not in typical either childcare or educational settings, being able to adapt to things like that. And we're forced to adapt right now. So the amount of ingenuity and kind of flexibility and creativity that I'm seeing around this is really a great thing, a good positive thing that's coming out of it. And we're kind of seeing as a species how resilient we can be. And so that's something that's a little ray of hope for me in this situation.
Yeah, and my garden looks darn good this year because I'm home so much. And, you know, whenever I get super anxious, I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to go out in the garden and plant some more seeds. Be fine. I have a pretty decent sized garden, and in the summer we're able to eat a lot of our own produce. But this year especially, it feels extra important to have as much self-resiliency as we can. And even if that's just being able to stretch the days between grocery store trips, which seems like a silly thing to be important right now, but it's pretty darn important to limit our contact as much as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel similarly. And I actually started my garden anew this year as well after giving up on it last year, because I did feel if we did have to stay in quarantine for longer than we had expected and when our produce was all gone and all the perishable goods are kind of past and you're living out of cans and, you know, rice and beans, it would be nice to have a couple of vegetables to add to that.
And they just taste way better than anything you get in the grocery store. And even if that supply chain doesn't get disrupted, there will be limited supplies for everyone who's now eating at home. And we're not set up as a world to live more insularly as we are right now. But the garden's been a help, and I've not bought any soil. I just have like a few new seeds, but a lot of it's been seeds saved from previous years and pulling out. My husband has like an archery range set up in the backyard, and he had some straw bales that have been out there for a while and they're starting to decompose. So I was able to take them and transfer them to the garden and help them in the soil. So trying to be more creative this year about not buying soil and compost and trying to work with what I've got, which has been a good exercise. And then the realization that there are certain things I just don't need to buy because of my eco-frugal ways. When everybody has been freaked out about toilet paper running out at the grocery store, we do use toilet paper for number 2. But number 1, I use family cloth, which up until this point, everyone was super grossed out about and didn't want to talk to me about it. But these days, suddenly people are a lot more interested. And our old baby cloth wipes from when my son was in diapers is now toilet paper. And so we have plenty of our laundry detergent, and as long as we have laundry detergent and water, then we have a close to unlimited supply of toilet paper and don't have to freak out when they're out at the store. And the same goes for paper towels and Kleenexes and that sort of thing.
I'm so glad that you brought that up. So your eco-frugal ways have really helped with your preparedness for situations like this. And I'm actually loving to see the kind of renewed interest that people have in creating a more sustainable and like closed system in their homes, because the more self-sufficient we can become, the less waste that goes into our waste streams and affects our earth, but also B, we're able to be more self-sufficient, and that helps us financially and just in terms of a feeling of security when we're in a situation like this. So tell me more about what other examples of eco-frugality have you kind of practiced in this situation?
Well, I think the garden's been a big one. Just we have a ton of garlic in the yard now, as pretty much always. And so we had some sauteed greens the other night, and we were able to put garlic in it that was fresh from the garden. And at this point, it just grows itself. So that's a free cost and helps get us something fresh in our meals that doesn't cost anything. I mean, we don't ever use any kind of paper plates or plastic utensils. We have paper towels for the really gross stuff, but generally we have our unpaper towels. And so, as long as we have enough laundry, we're pretty much good on that front. And then my clothes buying ban is super easy right now because nobody's going anywhere and not shopping. Pretty much our day-to-day stuff, we're pretty set. And so it helps to feel like there's not a lot we need to go out and buy. I've got plenty of stuff for canning and fermenting, and we've been making a lot of baked stuff from scratch. We had garlic breadsticks with spaghetti last night, and we've made some naan. When you have more of the basics at home, you can also make more interesting meals, and you don't have to worry about your bread products spoiling or you're running out of jam or that sort of thing, because it lasts longer. And just practicing the ability to do those things. We had pizza night, and we made the pizza from scratch and the pizza sauce from scratch. So we didn't have to go to the store to get a pizza crust and a jar of pizza sauce. As long as we have the basic ingredients on hand, we can be pretty creative.
That's a really great point, and creativity kind of comes into it. I think a lot of people are, for the first time, having to cook at home a lot, balancing that with supporting local businesses and ordering takeout. I think that's another good thing that's going to come out of this. And obviously, this is a really serious situation. You mentioned, a lot of people are not driving right now. I mean, the roads are pretty much empty. If anyone's seen pictures of the LA freeways, which are normally packed bumper to bumper, and there's like 5 cars in the entire picture, I think ultimately people will realize that we don't have as much of a reliance on our cars. If more people are able to telecommute or work from home, that would be better for the planet. Are there any other kind of like positives that you see that might come out of this, or that you hope might be an upside of the situation?
I've been cautious to really think or talk about that so much, because I feel like right now we need to more focus on the severity of the situation and realizing there are a lot of people that still do have to go to work, whether they are a nurse or a doctor or a grocery store worker or a childcare provider for those essential employees. So while, my car has been sitting and I haven't gotten gas since, sometime in February, it's a really privileged thing to say that there are positives that are coming out of this. I do hope that we will be able to talk more about how technology can reduce work travel and allow for more teleconferencing and more teleworking. But I think we have to be careful to talk too much about the positives, because there are a lot of people who can't even see those right now. And it can be a really divisive thing. So I do have hope that there are positives that can come out of this, but I don't want it to come out as harming the people who can't make those changes either.
Absolutely. And we have to be conscious that there are people who are on the front lines here who may not have a choice to be able to stop working if they don't want to. And of course, our healthcare heroes who are on the front lines of this virus battle, but also people who are food delivery workers that many other people are relying on to get access to the things that they need without exposing themselves. So I really am glad that you brought up that point. Thank you for talking to me about your experience with COVID and lifestyle-wise, how things have changed, and also how the way that you've, financially and eco-frugally prepared and had some emergency preparedness in the past has helped you to be ready for the situation. We had no idea that this was going to happen. We don't know what the future holds for us.
It's a very weird place to realize that you can feel virtuous by ordering takeout and sitting on your couch.
Yeah, so this is an upside down world that we live in, right?
Yeah. I mean, groceries have always been our Achilles heel of spending too much on food and drink. And right now it's like, well, I guess I've been practicing my whole life to be good at takeout.
To support your local businesses when they really, really need it. Another tip that I saw you mention is to purchase gift cards from your businesses that may not be able to be even open right now, providing delivery or takeout options. So that's something that you can do if you have additional, if you have extra money right now that you would be able to put towards someone.
Or if you pay a house cleaner and you still have your job and maybe the house cleaner is not coming. I have friends and local folks that have said, you know what, I'm still going to pay my house cleaner. They're not going to be able to come for the next however long, but I can still pay them, so I'm going to. And so I would really encourage any listeners that are still in a good financial situation to think about those recurring charges, especially with small businesses or individuals that really rely on that income. If you can pay them or even pay forward, or if you're a massage therapist, if you're not going and getting your massage like you normally would, if you can pay for a future massage, that will really, really help them get through this right now. If you're fortunate financially, now is the time to step up and really help the important people and employees in your life, because we want them to be there when this all calms down.
And other ways that you can help that are non-financial would be to assist by offering services that you would normally charge for, or skills that you have that are not something that you normally charge for. If you're familiar with teleconferencing softwares and you can help a brick and mortar business go online with their services, help a yoga studio set up on Zoom and figure out a PayPal or a Venmo method to be able to continue to operate in a social distancing friendly way. That's something that you don't have to spend money on, but you can spend your time to be able to support those businesses that are important in your community.
Yeah, I would agree. There's a lot of just word of mouth and getting information out for businesses that even if you don't have the funds, just sharing that information with others who might can go a long way.
Yeah, liking their Facebook page, following them on social media, giving a review on Yelp is another thing that you can do. Doesn't cost any money. It doesn't even cost very much time, but it could make a difference when those businesses are reopening, when word of mouth is important for people who are now going to be flooding back into the local business space and trying to figure out what restaurants to go to or what service providers to use. That can be another way to assist your local businesses.
And it has the bonus of making you feel like you can be doing something positive to help us all get through this, because we really are all in this together, like the whole world, which is not something that we can say about many things, but this we absolutely can.
I love that. On that note, thank you so much for being on the podcast, Angela. I've really enjoyed this conversation. Where can everyone go to find out more about you?
I blog over at Tread Lightly, Retire Early. And I also recently launched a collaboration with a friend at ecofrugals.com, which is more focused on tips and resources to live a more eco-frugal life. And then if you are a woman listening to this, I run a 14,000 member women's personal finance group on Facebook, which is like the best, most positive place on Facebook. So I would love to see you over there.
Great. And I will link to all of that in the show notes. I encourage you to go check it out.
Thanks, Becky.
Thanks, Angela. To check out the show notes for this episode, which includes links to resources mentioned in today's interview and where you can learn more about Angela, go to 20free.co/episode 14. Time for power moves. I want this to be more than just a podcast for listening to, so I'm making it a do-cast, where you're getting information from the podcast that you can take action on to create real outcomes in your life. I call these power moves. If you implement even one of these tactics into your life, you're taking a powerful step towards finding your freedom. Chances are you've had moments during this crisis where you felt totally powerless. That feeling that everything that is happening is completely out of your control can be overwhelming. The good news is there are some things you can do right now to take back your power and to make this a productive time. My hope is that these power moves can help you restore a sense of normalcy and security to your life as we weather this crisis together. I encourage you to start small. Pick the power move that seems the easiest to you and do that one first. Each power move contains several suggestions, so break it down and take one action at a time. This will help prevent overwhelm and will assist you in feeling incrementally more in control. If you take one action per day over the next week, you will be much further ahead than trying to do everything today and giving up out of overwhelm. What are some power moves that we learned from this conversation? Here are 7. Power move number 1, practice emergency preparedness. This is a great time to evaluate the ways in which you were not sufficiently prepared for these circumstances, and do research and make a plan to become more prepared in the future. Like Angela said, it is possible that following this crisis, many more people will be prepared for emergencies than they were before. Being prepared for emergencies, whether that is a natural disaster, weather-related emergencies, or a pandemic such as this one, brings a feeling of security and peace of mind that is priceless. Gather your emergency supplies together, make a list of them, and then consult a list of generally recommended emergency supplies to see what you are missing. Also, be sure to specifically prepare for the most common types of emergencies in your area, such as snowstorms or tornadoes. You can find a free, downloadable emergency preparedness list at www.20free.co/episode 14. Consider creating a spending category for emergency items in order to save specifically for expenditures of this kind. Emergency preparedness doesn't just mean having the right tools and supplies. It also means having enough food and water to shelter in place for a period of time. Do your research to determine how long you want to be prepared to shelter in place, and then calculate how much food, water, and paper and sanitary items you would need to keep your family and pets sheltered in place for that amount of time. You don't have to go out and buy all of these items at once. It is best to make a plan and shop sales to bulk up your pantry. Be sure that you are storing food that you will actually eat, and consider storing high-calorie, versatile foods with long shelf lives, such as rice, beans, and pastas. You can find a list with ideas of foods to stock up on at 20free.co/episode 14. Power move number 2, become financially prepared. This is a good time to test out your financial preparedness. Was your emergency fund the right size? Did it account for the possibility of both you and your partner losing your jobs? Or for having to pay employees while not making income in your business? Or for having to pay mortgages on several rental properties with no rent money coming in? We could all be served by evaluating if our financial preparedness could become more conservative. That means thinking about whether your personal and business emergency funds should be bigger or more accessible to you, in the case that it is in laddered CDs or something less accessible than plain cash. Additionally, consider diversifying your income sources. Having one single income source can cause financial hardship if that stream of income is lost. Many people have experienced this recently with sweeping layoffs at corporations and the diminished demand for certain gig economy roles. Start building up side gigs now to prepare for the next financial crisis. Finally, keep your expenses low. The less you have to pay monthly for fixed expenses means you have more flexibility in tight financial times. Fewer monthly payments to debt means that you won't default if you lose your income source. If you keep fixed expenses low and make sure that discretionary spending can be cut when needed, you will feel much more financially prepared for the next crisis. Power move number 3, become more self-sufficient. Self-sufficiency is a pretty large concept. It can relate to whether you can grow, cook, preserve, and prepare your own food. It can relate to the skills you have, such as fixing things, baking bread, and technology troubleshooting. It can mean whether you are able to survive in your home without needing to buy consumable items such as paper plates, toilet paper, paper towels, soaps, etc. Angela and I both practice self-sufficiency through gardening to grow our own food and owning high-quality, reusable items that replace consumables like paper towels and toilet paper. Angela has not bought new clothing in over 3 years. I personally make my own personal care items instead of buying them. During this crisis, I'm also taking the time to learn more skills around cooking from scratch with simple ingredients. We are reducing our food waste and trying even harder to fix things instead of replacing them. Think about the ways you can increase your self-sufficiency and start small. Power move number 4, help others. You can help other people even if you are not able to contribute financially. Here are a few ideas of non-monetary assistance. Create a Facebook group about supporting small businesses. Offer services that you would normally charge for free, or skills that you have that you wouldn't normally charge for, such as using your teleconferencing skills to help a brick-and-mortar business go online or help someone connect with their family. Use word of mouth to get information out for businesses. Like Facebook pages, follow on social media, and give a review on Yelp for local small businesses. Reach out to someone you know who is immunocompromised, disabled, or elderly, and offer to pick up or coordinate no-contact drop-offs for medication or groceries. You can even batch this with your own trips so fewer people have to go out. Check in on people that are living alone by sending them a text or giving them a call. If you are financially secure, here are a few ways you can help others. Shift discretionary spending to support small businesses, such as buying takeout and giving big tips. Purchase gift cards to local businesses. Continue to pay recurring charges with small businesses and individuals, such as a house cleaner. Pay ahead for services that you can then get later, such as if you have a massage therapist that you can't see right now. Consider if your stimulus check could help someone else right now more than it would help you. You could donate it or use it to help someone else afford groceries or medication. You could also give bonuses to your employees or contractors to help ease financial strain on them. Power move number 5, stay connected. Now more than ever, it's important that we stay connected. Thinking about the bright side of this situation made me realize that it is just as easy for me to get together with my friend who lives halfway around the world as it is for me to see my family who lives in the same state. There are creative ways to get together, such as family game nights, watching Netflix together using web browser extensions, or just meeting up for virtual drinks. Angela even has in-person social distancing happy hours where her and her neighbors hang out on their front yards or in a cul-de-sac at least 10 feet apart. You can start up a group chat with old friends, or just give people that you don't see often a phone call. Even though these social interactions aren't the same as meeting up in person and getting a hug from someone you love, you can get creative to figure out ways to create meaningful connections while we are self-isolating. Power move number 6, mourn what you've lost. When we are seeking control in an uncontrollable situation, that just causes more pain. Wishing and hoping that the gathering or vacation that you spent forever planning could still happen is not going to change the outcome. It's only going to affect your mental state. It's important to let go of the things that we were attached to and mourn what we've lost. Many of us have lost the opportunity to spend time with loved ones, our sense of normalcy, and our comfortable schedule. Some of us have lost our jobs, or a loved one, or an exciting opportunity. No matter how big or small the things that you've lost are, note them down and give yourself permission to mourn them. This is an important first step to moving on and regaining normalcy and happiness right now. Power move number 7, get into a routine. Now that you've let go of what you've lost, start to accept and adapt to the way that your life has changed. That starts with creating new routines. There are likely many activities that have been stripped from your schedule, like social outings, children's activities, and your commute to work. There could also be additional responsibilities on your plate now. Embrace the change and look to create a new routine for your new reality. Could you replace your morning commute time with walking around the block listening to an audiobook? Could you replace the time that you spend at drinks with friends with a regular group call? Also acknowledge that you will spend more time doing some things and less doing others. You might need more sleep now because there are more stresses in everyday life. You might spend less time exercising because you don't have access to your full gym. Figure out what constraints your new reality places on your schedule, and also make sure that you create time for the healthy stuff that makes you happy, such as sleep, exercise, and quality social time. You can find links to resources on emergency and financial preparedness at 20free.co/episode 14. That's the word 20, FREE.co/episode 14. Next week, I interviewed Jessica from The Pioneers about how to cope during a crisis. This is a super actionable podcast that will help you dive even deeper into getting back into a healthy routine and overcoming stress and anxiety in these uncertain times. Subscribe to this podcast wherever you are listening to be notified as soon as that episode goes live. Need someone to talk to about recent changes in your finances due to COVID-19? Connect with me on a free 10-minute coaching call at 20free.co/moneycoaching, and we'll discuss how I can help. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you're subscribed to the Find Your Freedom podcast on whatever app you're using to listen to this episode. Do me a favor and also leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Go to 20free.co/iTunes to be redirected to the page on Apple Podcasts where you can leave your rating and review. I really appreciate it. If you think this episode would help someone you know, please share it with a friend. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Find Your Freedom podcast. My name is Becky. You can connect with me on Instagram and Twitter at 20freeco and sign up for free resources and email updates at www.20free.co. That's the word 20, FREE.co. I'll talk to you next week on another episode of the Find Your Freedom podcast.